I have been eating all the things. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr, the host of the Modern Motherhood podcast from All Mom Does. And as we are continuing to work through a lot of what has been a very interesting season for us, with a lot of us at stay-at-home issues or shelter-in-place mandates, all those things, one of the things I keep seeing people talking about is, the nutritional wheels are starting to come off the bus. Am I right? I'm so excited today to have Brittany Williams on the podcast. You may know her best on all the social media platforms as Instant Loss. She has a pretty amazing story of breaking free from cycles of unhealthy emotional eating, what she learned about herself on the other side, and lots of ideas about what to cook from home when you can't rely anymore on all of the takeout stuff and all of that a lot of us have gotten used to. So take a listen. Here's Brittany. Brittany, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we are delighted. So, Brittany, tell my listeners who you are, what you do, the kids, the husband, all the things.
Well, in a nutshell, I became known because I lost 125 pounds in a year. I issued myself a challenge at the beginning of 2017 that I was going to try to cook more foods at home. I stay home with my kids. My husband was the full-time working parent at that time, and I was homeschooling. So I had ample time on my hands to do it. I just found that was like always one of my biggest excuses for not eating well was I just don't have a lot of time. So a way that I fixed that was I kind of got married to my pressure cooker for a while, and it solved one of my biggest dilemmas. And that was, how can I cook healthy meals at home quickly? Because you can procrastinate all day long. You can have chicken breasts in the freezer that you forget to take out to thaw, and you don't have to pre-plan like you do with a slow cooker where you have to pre-plan your meals 4 to 6 hours ahead. You can just toss everything into the pot frozen, and you'll have an edible, delicious meal on the table in under 30 minutes. So that's what I kind of became known for on social media, and that's how my platform took off. But we share a lot of funny home antics. I share a lot with my husband, who has now come home and is working with me full time from home now. And we homeschool our kids together. So we share a lot of our lifestyle on our platform, Instant Loss. And it's not just all about cooking or pressure cooking. I try to put little nuggets in there for everyone.
And Brittany, I think right now, because as we are recording this, you and I are both quarantined at houses. You out where you live, me here where I live. I am currently hiding in the master closet because I have so many people trying to work and school from home at the moment. This is the last bastion of safety. So I am, yeah. But for a lot of people listening, this season for them is really new, really fresh, and right. They may have had a lifestyle where they're much more accustomed to going and grabbing food out and everybody being on the go. And now everybody's home and people are having to think more about how they're going to be cooking. So, I know for some people, they might think, well, wow, this is a whole new season, but this is a lifestyle that you have been living for quite a while. Talk to me about just the psychology, because having lost 125 pounds, I'm sure there are a lot of things that you had to really determine and face about what your habits had been leading up to this decision to start cooking more from home and going more organic and all the things. What do you think people need to be on the lookout for when it comes to, let's face it, girl, there seems to be so much comfort in carbs, particularly right now. So what have you learned as you have walked this journey about the reasons why we sometimes turn to food for such a level of comfort, particularly when things are really chaotic?
Right. So when I first started my healthy eating journey, I had to face a lot of hard truths and work through a lot of things. And what I discovered was that I was a conditioned emotional eater, and that it was a habit that I formed way back in childhood. And it was a way that my parents a lot of times fixed problems. We would have something go wrong at home, or there would be an emotional outburst from one of my parents. And the way that they kind of tried to fix that or soothe that over with us was the very next day or the very next meal, it was, all right, everybody load up in the car and we're going to go around and we're going to get all of our favorite fast food items, and we'll go to the store and we'll pick up candy and ice cream and all of our favorite treats. And then we'll come home and have a carpet picnic and put on some shows and we'll just veg out in front of the TV. And there was no resolution. There was no solution to ever fix what had happened. There were no apologies. It was just shoving it all down and stuffing these emotions with food. And so that's something that I carried into my adulthood. If I'm stressed out, if I'm sad, if I'm upset, if I'm confused, it's my defense mechanism to turn to food and to try to fix those emotions with, like you said, sugar, carbohydrates, any of those things that I learned to find comfort in. And what I discovered was I had to look for comfort elsewhere if I was ever going to have a healthy relationship with food. Certainly there can be unhealthy relationships that are formed when we restrict food, but also food in excess can be unhealthy patterns and behaviors that we form. So I was very, very diligent, and I brought in a help team. I told my husband, I confided in him, I confided in my aunt, I confided in friends, and I said, look, I'm going to need you guys to lean on, because I'm going to try not to lean so heavily on food anymore. I really want food to be something that I use and to nourish, to strengthen my body. I mean, it's also something that we can still in healthy ways find comfort in. I'm not saying that we can't ever do that, but I was taking it to an extreme where I was binging on these things to the point that I would make myself sick. And so having a support team that you can trust with your emotions, that you can trust with your feeling, even if it's a psychologist that you decide to get a hold of and start doing therapy sessions, it can really help you work through and unpack a lot of these feelings so that you don't feel like you need to stuff those things with food anymore. Because I was an everything eater. I was a bored eater too. So again, that goes back to conditioning. That's a learned behavior that, all right, well, I'm bored and I'm sitting here and I'm watching TV and I want something to do with my hands. So what am I going to do? And at first it feels awkward to take those snacks away, and it feels awkward to take those things away. But you do begin to form healthier habits and healthier ways of dealing with your emotions, and especially during times right now where things are very uncertain and a lot of us are scared and we don't know when things are going to go back to normal. I find that it's very easy to fall back, especially, for me, somebody that's so conditioned to fall back into those patterns and behaviors. But again, reaffirming like, okay, that's in the past. We don't have to resort to those methods anymore. I found healthier ways to deal with my emotions. So what can we do instead? And one thing that I found really beneficial is finding something that is a positive thing to swap that emotion out with. So normally I'd sit here and I'd binge eat pizza and watch Netflix and eat a whole bag of chips. Now I'm going to turn away from that, and maybe I'm going to go for a walk around the neighborhood instead. We live on a little bit of property, so we have a lot of free movement here. But you can still get out as long as you're 6 feet away from the next person. It's okay. You can go outside. You can take a walk around your neighborhood. You can go to a park. Just don't play on the play equipment,
Right.
and take a walk around the track there, and just get yourself busy doing something else so that your mind isn't dwelling and going over and over and obsessing over these things, and replace it with a positive action.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that's been really interesting for me in all of this is that strange sense of, praise God, my family's healthy right now. Your family is healthy right now. And yet in some ways, I'm going into some behavior patterns, almost like I'm recovering from something. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be really easy with myself. And of course, I haven't had gluten in a long, long time, but I'm going to eat the gluten right now. I mean, just some decisions that are so fascinating in the way they are connected emotionally to what's going on. I love that you brought up some new habits you can replace with physical activity and some things like that. What are some ways that you're starting to go back toward some patterns that you've worked so hard to break? And what can we be on the lookout for?
So I've been in maintenance for 2.5 years now. And what I've found is it can be a really slippery slope when we begin to allow foods that we generally stay away from back into our life. But the flip side of that is restricting too much can lead to even bigger binges. So you kind of have to find this line that you walk. And that's why I always encourage people that when you're looking to change your eating patterns, or when you're trying to eat healthy, you want to pick a way of eating that you can stick with for the rest of your life. Because just because you lose the weight or because you hit your goal, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden what you did to get there stops and you go back to the way that it was before. And I think that's why a lot of people experience regain so quickly. It's because as soon as you stop those patterns and behavior, you just regain it all back. So what I've found is that you have to go right back to the way that you generally eat with the next meal or the next day, or allow yourself that time. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to, eat some gluten. Like the other day, we picked up some bags of chips that we don't normally get. And we thought, oh, it would be really fun to have a family movie night. And I ate a whole sleeve of Oreos. Yeah. And I'm like, I never do this. Yep. What's wrong with me? And evaluating those feelings and working through them, but also allowing myself the grace to like, okay, I had it and it was an experience, and now I feel poorly, or now I'm craving all of the sugar because like I've kind of reawakened that in myself. So how am I going to navigate this? And it's going back to the way that I was before, right with the next meal, not letting myself travel down that slippery slope, because I have like the holiday season, right after I lost all of my weight, I was just like, oh, I did so great all year long and I've been maintaining really well. So if I just allow myself to like enjoy the holidays and eat whatever I want to eat and really kind of go a little bit crazy, we'll just see what happens. And then I'll just get right back to it in January and it won't be a big deal at all. Well, so then I allowed myself to do that all of November, all of December. And then January. Then January rolled around and we moved, which is another huge trigger for a lot of people, because like during a move, you're not going to be cooking. What are you doing? You're ordering pizza for everybody, every meal. And so January we moved, and then the rest of January, we were settling in. And then finally, the end of February rolled around and I stepped on the scale and I was back up 40 pounds. And I was like, okay, so here's what I've learned. I'm not going to be mad about it. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. But here's what I've learned. Like, I've learned that you can allow yourself to have those meals, but then the rest of the meals have to be good. It's right. Like that 80-20 rule that we always hear about, 80% good and 20% maybe less than ideal. And that's how you really find like this maintenance balance, is not allowing yourself to have it so that you don't feel restricted and then leads to these like crazy binge cycles, or this crazy, what we call falling off the wagon, but also not going too far in the other direction, not like 50-50 or 20-80 the other way, but really like 80-20 with the main focus on like healthy foods, less processed, things that come from the earth, lots and lots of plants, lots of green, and keeping it very simple, like one ingredient foods, but you put all those one ingredient foods together and you have something that is really great, instead of something maybe packaged and processed that has 50 ingredients already, and then you're adding it to other things. And it's like, wait a second, what's even in this that I'm eating?
Right. It's very interesting to me, just sort of from a sociological snapshot, because at our grocery store right up the road from us, which is a major chain that's available within Texas called H-E-B, it's absolutely fascinating right now, Brittany, because they've done a very good job of helping navigate traffic in the store and all of that. But when you go, the produce section is jam-packed. And understand, I live in Austin, Texas, which is known for its healthy eating, its organic eating. The produce section is jam-packed. The processed food sections are cleaned out, girlfriend.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like a Hoover vacuum went through. And I think that part of it is because people are trying to think, well, how can I get to the store less frequently? Right. But then I also think there's something to the idea of that convenience, that comfort, those things that maybe we wouldn't buy on the reg, but here we are. And so I do see that happening quite a bit, where people are flipping what probably has been a healthier percentage and maintainable, and they've taken it the other way. And, true confessions, I'd probably have to put myself in some of that category. So
Well, and right now there's like a lot of forgiveness to give ourselves. Like, and there's a lot of leeway because most people don't have to cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks. Like if you have kids snack like 42 times a day.
Constantly. Amen.
And my kids are bored eaters too. And so they're like, anytime they're bored, it's like, Mom, I'm hungry. I'm like, I literally just fed you 15 minutes ago. You cannot be hungry. It's not possible. But I know it's because they're bored. And it's weird because my kids are home all the time. They're homeschooled. This is our normal everyday life. And it seems like it's strange because we feel it here too.
We do too. We do too, girl.
And it's just wild because I'm like, there's no reason why I should feel like trapped here. This is my everyday, but I feel trapped just because it's probably just my personality type because I'm so extroverted. Somebody tells me that you can't leave your house and all I want to do is
now
leave.
You got to go. Yeah, exactly. Well, this is a little bit of a weird pivot, but you've been living life in front of people via social media for a while. And one of the fascinating things to me, Brittany, is how controversial weight loss and eating and all the things can be, because some people get into some zone where when you're talking about healthy living, they're concerned that you're body shaming someone. Sometimes even after someone has gone through a tremendous weight loss or a transformation, they still get body shamed for stuff and on and on. And I set that on the shelf for a second. We've got a culture now that if they haven't been as engaged in living online, oh girl, they are now, because this is the outlet, right? In the moment in which we're living. Lots of people getting onto social media, all kinds of platforms experiencing tremendous upticks in traffic. So here's where I take these two items I was just talking about and put them together for a question for you. You do such a brilliant job, I think, of not engaging the trolls, but at the same time, you've got good boundaries on social media. Like I have watched you lovingly but firmly shut someone down who's going too far on something. So as some of my listeners are doing more social interaction through the venue of social media, how do you evaluate what you're going to respond to and what you're going to leave alone? And how do we live in a lane of being firm but not just, scalding somebody? Like, how do you make those decisions? Because you've been here a while longer than some of us.
I think that right now, especially in my lane, there's two opposite ends of the spectrum. There is the all weight loss is inherently bad. It doesn't matter if it's for medical purposes. We just need to absolutely accept and love our bodies exactly the way that they are. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is like the diet culture end of the spectrum, where it's like hopping from new diet fad from week to week to week. And we're very obsessive, and it's almost like an eating disorder. And it's disordered eating, where you're thinking about it and you're obsessing over it all the time, and you're obsessing over all your calorie intake. And so there's that opposite end of the spectrum. And I like to think like body positivity is somewhere that's right in the middle, where we can kind of see the bad things about that end and the bad things about this end and go, you know what, I just want to be the healthiest me that I can be. And I know that for me, that's nourishing my body well and making sure that I have ample movement. Back to what you were asking though, on either end of the spectrum, I get a lot of like pushback. And it's not necessarily in the comment section. A lot of times it's in DMs. And I think it's because people know that if they were to post this publicly, they'd probably get a lot of backlash from followers. And I think that for bigger accounts, a lot of people do have a lot of loyalty in their followers. And so you'll see like sometimes I can even sit back if it's in the comment section. I'll sit back and I'll maybe let somebody say something, and not delete it just because I want to see how other people respond. And they'll jump in and they'll come to my defense and I don't even have to touch it at all. And then they very quickly get embarrassed and delete their comment because they don't want the repercussions of what and they're done. They're like, all right, I'll peace out. But for me, at first I was really afraid to get not combative. I don't want to say combative, but I was afraid to like interact with people on that level, especially when they were saying things that were negative, or you know that they were only saying that because they were trying to like call you out,
Right.
on something. And so at first I wouldn't engage, but now I've kind of come into my own, and I realize that I can be kind and respond, and that it's not a negative thing. It's not a drawback. It's not a mark against me, but it really is just sticking up for and defending myself. And there's strength in that. And then it also there's a kind of relief too, in yourself when you're able to defend yourself in a way and say, wait a second, I think that maybe you got it wrong, and here's where I'm coming from, and having that conversation. And sometimes you end up deleting and blocking the person anyway, but sometimes they go, oh, wow, okay, I didn't realize that's the way that you meant it, because there's so much lost in translation on social media. I mean, we post on Instagram, we post a picture and we post 350 characters or however many, that these little captions, and there's so much that can be left up to interpretation. And sometimes people just don't get your tone.
Right.
But there are definitely trolls. And what I tell people, especially people who are new to social, is a lot of times it's best to not even engage. Or if you're in a group and you think that it's inappropriate behavior, all of these platforms now have buttons where you can report people for bullying, for hate speech, for being unkind, and you can report them. And a lot of times group admins will then remove the people, or they'll remove the comments. If it's on people's personal pages, they can delete it. Or a lot of times Instagram will flat out remove the person's profile if it's profane enough, which I love that all of these platforms are standing up against bullying in these forms, because it really is hurtful. I mean, you look at people and they have a lot of followers, and you think, wow, it probably doesn't bother them. Or maybe sometimes we're jealous and we want to take them down a peg, because I don't know, we feel we need to do that sometimes. But these people, it doesn't matter how many followers they have. I don't care if you're like Justin Timberlake. He still reads his comments and he responds sometimes.
Right.
And so I think that we all need to just be a bit more mindful about how we talk about each other, how we treat each other, even when we're watching television in our own homes, and maybe we're man, that dress doesn't look as flattering as on her as it should, or that's not her color, she should have worn this instead. Our children are listening to those things, and those become the voices in their minds too, and that becomes the way that they treat and talk to people as well. And so I think that it's very, very important to be mindful that the way that we talk about other people, even when we're not on social media, when we talk about people on TV, or whether it's how we talk about people behind their back, our friends, our family members.
So I think it is very, very important, because the voices that we speak with, they become our children's inner voice. And I think that we need to be more mindful of our speech in all platforms, because really, when we are saying these things over social media, we are saying it to people's faces. We just really don't realize how powerful our words can be, but they do. They have so much power.
Yeah, they truly do. And I appreciate you taking the time to unpack how you have managed, because you've really built a beautiful online community around yourself. But I've also seen you maintain that culture very, very well. And I think as more of us are getting into that space where some of us for the first time are having to learn how to navigate work remotely in a way that's really unique, or we're trying to engage in communities that can be very life-giving, but we want to make sure it remains that way. So I appreciate your insights on that. So I'm going to jump back to food, because, you're the girl. You've got these 2 amazing cookbooks out. You are the reason I bought an air fryer, because you have a recipe for this bacon wrap pork tenderloin with apple thing that when I came across that, I was like, well, that's it. Now I have to have an air fryer. I already had an Instant Pot. I was already in on the pressure cooker thing. But then I was like, Brittany, this is your fault when that big box came to my house. But it's amazing. We love that particular kitchen tool. So how do we do our best to, yes, not shame ourselves, all the things, particularly in a season like this, but start to ramp up being more intentional about what we're eating, how we're feeding our family, and getting back into the game of cooking more from home and trying to make it last, trying to make it count, and make meals special again?
I think the number one thing is not overcomplicating it. We look for a lot of rules. That's what I find. People message me all the time and they're like, am I allowed to eat this? Am I allowed to eat that? And I'm like, don't, it doesn't matter. I mean, pay attention to your portions, but when it comes down to it, as long as it's whole, unprocessed stuff that comes from the earth, eat it. Just kind of check, is this made in a factory or does this come from the ground? And if it comes from the ground, consume it. And if maybe it comes from the factory, leave it behind. But within that, don't overcomplicate your meals. You don't need to use 120 different things to make one thing. Keep it very simple. Grill a chicken breast, grill a steak, have some broccoli on the side or a nice side salad, and really kind of get your kids accustomed to eating the way that you're eating. So when we made over our lifestyle, I didn't just make over my lifestyle. I made over my lifestyle for my entire family. And it's kind of one of those things. It's a little bit more old fashioned, but it's like, if you don't like what I made, then you can go hungry. And within that, I still try to pay attention to, the things that, my son Benjamin doesn't love tomatoes, and my daughter Avi, she's not a huge fan of avocado. So maybe I'll just leave those things off of their portions. But for the most part, trying to make meals that the entire family can enjoy. And within that, it's keeping it simple. So I try to keep 2 meals a day, very, very simple. And then maybe one's a little bit more complicated. But like breakfast, eggs, strawberries, you're out. There you go. There's breakfast, for lunch, just do a big, huge salad, toss in whatever vegetables that you enjoy, use a little olive oil, balsamic vinegar, Dijon mustard, if that's your thing, give it a squirt of honey if you want a little bit more sweetness. And there's a delicious salad for lunchtime. And all that requires is a little bit of chopping. I mean, usually I can throw a salad together in under 5 minutes. So these are things that really don't take you much time at all. And then for dinner, maybe put a little bit more thought into your family dinner. And that's where I tell people, that's where my cookbooks really shine. Go through the cookbooks and pick out a recipe that you think, oh, my kids would love chicken spaghetti. So let's make chicken spaghetti for dinner. And maybe stir in a little bit of spinach at the end if you want to get more greens in, or steam some broccoli and serve that on the side. I mean, these are very simple but practical things. And that's the way that I knew that I was going to have success and want to continue doing this. And that was only by making it easy. You have to make it easy on yourself, or it's not going to be something that you're going to continue.
You can maintain. Absolutely. So talk to us, because I know my listeners are going to want to know this for sure. Let's say that, here they are doing the things, they're sheltering at home. They get to the grocery store, like I was telling you, my grocery store, which all the typical things, the prepackaged that they are accustomed to buying are gone. And now they're coming home with things that their kids may be like, I've never seen that before. How do you navigate helping kids get to the place where they can make these adjustments in eating for things that are more real food, not processed food, particularly if the way you've been doing it up to this point has been relying on things that are prepackaged? How did you make that transition for your kids so it wasn't pain, agony, tears, and, fist fights at the dinner table every night?
So we had some tears at first because it was an adjustment period, but what I found was the more that I got them involved, the more willing they were to try new things with me. And also having discussions with them. When they're really little, they can't really understand. But as they get older, and especially for like middle schoolers or teenagers, sitting down and talking to them about like, this is why we're making these changes. This is the way that it can benefit our lives. And even taking your teenagers to the grocery store and say, hey, I want you to help read labels with me. Let's read labels and look for certain like key ingredients that we might want to stay away from, like high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, and things like that, highly refined ingredients, and go over like, this is the reason why we're not eating it with them. Because kids really do understand a lot more than we think that they do. So that's kind of how I started with my kids and how I started to win them over. But how I continued to win them over was letting them get involved in my grocery trips with me. That's really difficult to do right now. So I'm not saying take your kids to the grocery store right now. Leave your kids home if you can. But when things begin to go back to normal, get them involved in grocery shopping and let them pick out a fruit or vegetable that they haven't tried before. And then when you get home and the excitement's still a little bit higher, say, all right, we're going to figure out how to cook this thing. And Google recipes for it online, or let them try a new piece of fruit and see how it tastes, and maybe pair it with some other fruit that they've had before, so it's not so foreign. Those are the ways that I started to win them over. And now, I mean, like I said, we're 2.5 years in now from this lifestyle change. They're very, very adjusted. But I'd say the first 2 weeks were my biggest battle. If you can just stay firm with your kids for 2 weeks and say, all right, we're getting rid of the hot Cheetos and the goldfish, and maybe we're going to try to go gluten-free to see if we have sensitivities. And if you can just hold firm for 2 weeks, after that 2-week mark, I don't know what it is about it, but things get so much easier. And then another thing I like to encourage parents to do is not to get rid of absolutely all the foods that your kids are accustomed to eating and love, but maybe just try to make them in healthier ways. So instead of, our weekly trip to McDonald's where my kids are eating chicken nuggets and French fries, instead I'm making turkey nuggets at home and sweet potato French fries in the air fryer. And they taste delicious. They taste just the same. My kids didn't even know that they were any different, and kind of managing it that way too.
I think those are fantastic tips because, Brittany, it's looking right now like this potentially could be going on for quite a while more. And so even if we have said, okay, we're going to have kind of an ollie oxen free right now, we're going to be doing the spicy hot Cheetos for a week and a half or whatever, there's going to come a point where we are going to need to transition into that place where we get back to the things that are truly self-care, the things that are truly good for us long term. I think those are fantastic tips about how to get your kids going with it. And that 2-week thing is really brilliant to help give parents an understanding of how long it can take to transition the palate. You've got lots of great recipes and ideas at instantloss.com. Brittany, I cannot thank you enough for coming on with the wisdom that you've had since you have been in the thick of it for a couple of years now, figuring out how to take all that stuff in the produce lanes and turn it into meals without a lot of the processed stuff alongside, and also getting your kids transitioned. I so appreciate your heart and wisdom. Thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Rebecca will have all the places that you can find Brittany and our show notes. Be sure and check that out. And you can find Brittany on Instagram at Instant Loss. I'd love to connect with you too. I'm Julie Lyles-Carr on all the socials. And while you're on the socials, check out All Mom Does. We have both allmomdoes.com and then All Mom Does on all the social platforms. It's a phenomenal place of community for you to get connected to other women who are walking through many of the same challenges and victories and questions and all the things of this season of life. So be sure and check out All Mom Does. A big thank you to Rebecca and Donna, our incredible team, our content coordinator and our producer, who help make sure that the podcast gets out to you each and every week. And would you do this for us? Would you go to wherever you subscribe to your podcast, whether that is on Apple Podcasts or on Stitcher or on Spotify, wherever, and would you leave us a 5-star rating and review and subscribe and share all the things? It really does help get the word out to everyone. And it lets us know that you're listening and that you are part of our tribe. So we would love it if you would go and do that. I cannot wait to bring you my next exciting guest on the next episode of the Modern Motherhood Podcast.